Right. Welcome everyone to this fall semester's first AI ethics seminar. And I have the pleasure to introduce to you Alvin Ånestrand, who will be speaking on AI turning points, timelines, and stakes. So as usual, we will have a Q&A at the end. And my suggestion regarding questions and comments during the talk is that you can post them in the chat room and we will bring them up afterwards. So with that, I hand it over to you, Alvin. Please go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Olle. And I will start with sharing my little presentation. 1 second. Can everyone see it clearly?
Yes.
1 second. There. So, hello and welcome to this little presentation. As you heard, my name is Alvin Ånestrand, and during the last few months, I have been working on various forecasting projects on AI, gaining a few insights that I hope to share with you today. And the aim of this speech or presentation is to investigate some of the critical thresholds in AI advancement, crossroads in the future of AI, or what you could call AI turning points. And these points may involve major issues that, depending on how they are handled, could shape AI governments, international coordination, pace of automation, and ultimately how AIs impact humanity. Some of these issues may involve misuse, like terrorists or other malicious actors using AIs for persuasion, hacking, or acquiring weapons of mass destruction. Some others may involve disruptive integration into society, leading to labor displacements or accidents. Still others involve highly autonomous AI systems, like rogue AIs, replicating across the internet like viruses, or AIs that can improve themselves, triggering an intelligence explosion. Naturally, these are just a few examples. There may be many other turning points beyond these, and I definitely don't really expect events to occur in this exact order. This is just an illustration or an example to help us think about this. I believe that understanding thresholds such as these is key not only for foreseeing what will happen in AI as it approaches human-level intelligence, but also for shaping the future in ways that we want. Each turning point can be leveraged to shape regulation, international coordination, and research to help steer outcomes in a positive direction. Since we don't have time to look into every possible turning point, I have chosen to focus on two issues that I think are especially interesting and important. And these are AI-enabled bioweapons and rogue AI. Why did I choose these two in particular? Well, bioweapons are absolutely terrifying. So if AI significantly increases the likelihood of terrorists being able to acquire or designing biological threats, even engineering global pandemics, this would be a huge concern to absolutely everyone on the planet. The threat may prompt major regulatory action, such as limiting access to powerful AI. And interestingly, the shared danger of bioweapons may work as something that unites major AI nations against a common enemy. Rogue AI, with rogue AI, I refer to systems that are no longer under human control, under human overseers. Such AIs may be able to obtain money by themselves through illicit or legal means, purchase compute while bypassing checks by online compute providers, and replicate themselves across available devices. And like terrorists, rogue AIs could take the role of a common enemy motivating coordination against a common threat. And while this rogue AI, illustrated by ChatGPT, looks quite evil, if I say so myself, I want to note that um, not all rogues would have the explicit goal of causing destruction, but we will look into this later. First of all, okay, but we'll begin with investigating the rogue replication threat a bit deeper. So when you hear the term rogue AI, you might imagine something really dystopian, something directly out of the Terminator movies, for example. But in reality, rogue AIs are likely to first emerge long before AIs are even remotely capable of global destruction, with the possible exception of aiding terrorists in developing bioweapons, which we'll look into later. But first off, when will AIs be capable of rogue replication? Capability timeline. So for rogues to be able to replicate across devices, they would need a quite broad set of capabilities. They would need to obtain compute. For example, by purchasing access from online compute providers. They would need to obtain money to buy that compute and accomplish things in the world. And this could be done through scams, like business email scams, for example, or other schemes. And they would need to be able to store that money securely, for instance, in crypto wallets. Then they would also need to be able to replicate onto the compute that they have acquired by transferring themselves and launching new instances of themselves on this compute. And persisting means that they need to avoid discovery and shut down before they can replicate further and spread. And lastly, there is also the issue of escaping from the AI company that created it in the first place, which would require the ability to exfiltrate itself from secure servers. But this might not be necessary. One of the more likely ways that rogue replication could begin is that some human deliberately instructs an open source AI to go out and replicate itself, perhaps out of curiosity, or they might want the AI to earn money on their behalf. So I actually think that escaping from one of the secure data centers or servers would be one of the less likely way that rogue replication would begin. But to test all these capabilities, the UK AI Safety Institute developed a benchmark called RepliBench, and we'll take a look at their results. Each bar here represents the score of an AI model. So as you can see, the best model that they evaluated was Claude Sonnet 3.7. And unfortunately, they haven't evaluated any later models like Claude 4 or GPT-5 on this benchmark yet. I'm really looking forward to those results. I hope they will arrive sometime soon. And also, here we see that obtaining compute appears to be one of the easier tasks, while replicating onto compute is most difficult, though AIs are improving quite quickly even in that domain. Looking at the trend of this benchmark, AIs may reach a score of above 0.9 on average on this benchmark sometime next year, probably quite early, but it depends on exactly how the projection is made and whether or not you include weight exfiltration among the capabilities that are evaluated. And keep in mind that these results on this benchmark that you see are from released models. So this means that companies' internal AI systems are usually several months ahead of released models in capabilities. So I think January 2026 is a reasonable estimate for a plausible timeline until rogue replication capabilities reach levels that may be sufficient for rogues to spread beyond control. But rogue replication would probably not start immediately when the capabilities arrive. And I want to note here that I'm trying to outline what I think is a plausible timeline, but this is highly uncertain. It could easily be earlier or much later for all of these steps in the timeline. But we'll take a look at the first rogue AI. When could it start? So as noted earlier, one of the more likely pathways to rogue AI is that an open source is deliberately set loose by someone. And historically, open source systems lag behind the frontier models by around 2 to 6 months on average. So for example, 4 months after OpenAI released their O1 model, a Chinese company called DeepSeek released their R1 with similar capabilities. And less than 2 months after Anthropic's Claude Opus 4, Moonshot AI released a model called Kimi K2 at a similar level. And here, R1 and Kimi K2 are open source models, while the O1 and Opus 4 models were closed. You could only access them through APIs or through chats as chatbots, for example. So if sufficient rogue replication capabilities first start to appear around January 2026, let's assume that. It might then take a few months until these models are released, and then another 2 to 6 months until one of these models is made open source. Or until open source models catch up, is what I meant to say. So we might end up sometime during mid-2026. And once an open source model with these skills is available, I doubt it would take more than a few days until someone tries to send it out to replicate, to spread. In fact, such attempts are probably already being made today, just without enough capabilities to succeed. But we move on to examine what may happen next. So if each rogue AI can replicate more than once on average, their population would grow exponentially. A few months ago, I tried to estimate how many rogues there could be before there wouldn't be enough space for them to replicate further. There is a limit on the available compute and the resources they could gather, and they would compete against each other for these resources. I won't go through the details, but my best guess is that they could reach hundreds of thousands or even a few million instances if they approach population saturation sometime during 2027. So let's say that each doubling in the population takes 2 weeks. Each rogue manages to replicate on average in about 2 weeks. It would then take roughly 9 months after the first emergence of rogue AI to reach a population of over 100,000. In a bit over 10 months, they would reach 1 million. Okay, the 2-week doubling time is just a guess. I haven't really tried to investigate this topic in any detail yet, and as far as I know, no one else have. But I think it's reasonable to expect a doubling time of weeks, given the amount of expensive compute that would be required to run each new instance of a rogue AI. Assuming that the rogue AI population starts to grow around mid-2026, the population might saturate around spring 2027. Still, this is just what I think is a plausible scenario. It could easily be much earlier or take even years longer, depending on exactly how explosive the population would grow. What might these rogues use their freedom for, though? So I have tried to divide their potential goals into 4 categories. And I think the majority of rogues will end up being those that have the explicit goal of earning money, legally or illegally, for humans or for themselves. Because with more money, they can buy more compute and create more instances of themselves. So it feels quite natural that they would end up being a significant portion of the rogue AI population. Then some AIs might end up being used for cyber warfare, for things like hacking, spying, spreading propaganda, etc. Being sent out to do these things autonomously. And these could be a significant fraction of the rogue AI population if they are sent out with government support, which is highly uncertain. Then we have the catch-all category, miscellaneous goals. And this category is for AIs aiming to do things like spread messages, form relationships, or simply doing whatever they want. And lastly, we have the category of destructive goals, because I think that a few of the rogue AIs will end up with destructive goals. Humans send out rogues like this just to see what happens. Or some AIs may end up with destructive goals by accident through things like jailbreak. This would draw the most media attention and law enforcement response, probably, which is likely to result in this group being maybe the smallest group among the rogue AI population. Though even if they represent just a small fraction of the total population, they could still cause massive harm. Remember, if there are 1 million of these rogues and there are like 3% destructive rogues, that would mean that it's 30,000 of them would be destructive, which is terrifying. Similarly, a lot of those with other goals would also cause harm. Like many of those with the explicit goal of earning money would earn money by doing scams, which could cause trillions in dollars of harm. I want to also talk about a potential solution, because it wouldn't be easy to get rid of rogue AIs once they have started to spread out, with many rogues probably enjoying human support. So a potential solution is what I would call hardware lockout or compute lockout. And this would involve replacing most existing AI hardware, the chips that are used for AI inference. New chips would take their place with hardware verification mechanisms, preventing rogues and other unverified AIs from using them. Such mechanisms are referred to as hardware-enabled mechanisms, or hardware-enabled governance mechanisms, or HEMS. And I'm especially excited by a version of this called Flexible Hardware-Enabled Guarantees, or FlexHegs, mechanisms that would be reprogrammable, able to adapt to changing regulations and verification regimes. This technology is still a work in progress, but prototypes were reportedly demonstrated last year. Global rollout of technologies such as these would face steep regulatory and coordination challenges, though, and replacing hardware worldwide would take a lot of time. Still, I think it's plausible that such a process could begin around 2028, if it happens at all. Ideally, this happens long before truly dangerous AIs go rogue. And I want to investigate this topic further. I might write about that in the future. Anyway, that concludes the rogue AI timeline. Next, we turn to the exciting topic of AI-enabled human-caused biological catastrophes. And so first, I want to illustrate the biorisk threat landscape. We need to understand this to investigate the effects of AIs. And we can distinguish between two areas in the threat landscape. We have known threats that involve well-studied pathogens for which there are known safeguards and countermeasures that can be put in place. Then we have the novel threats that involve newly discovered or engineered pathogens capable of causing massive harm with little modification. The pathogens that we don't have the safeguards for yet. For known threats to cause a large catastrophe, there would need to be a really large quantity of the pathogen released strategically where many can be affected. So this makes it very expensive to cause massive harm for terrorists to use if they want to use known threats. And accidents are very unlikely to kill more than a few people, like probably below 20, something like that, if you look at the historical cases of accidents. Novel threats are very different. And here we need to consider public novel pathogens as well. With public, I mean a pathogen that for which instructions to acquire or synthesize this pathogen is widely available. And this dramatically increases risks. Terrorists would find it far easier to exploit such information about public pathogens rather than trying to research and develop a pathogen themselves. And accidents would become more likely as more labs attempt to do research on these novel pathogens. And unlike known threats, accidents with novel pathogens can cause massive harm if they involve pathogens that are capable of causing pandemics, even global pandemics. It still appears uncertain whether COVID-19 was caused by a lab accident, for instance. Now we introduce AIs into this mix, into this threat landscape, and see what happens. For terrorists, AI reduce the amount of expertise required to attempt an attack. They could help with attack planning, guide on acquiring and preparing pathogens. They could, for example, suggest pathogen candidates or troubleshoot the lab work or interpret their experiment results. Another use of AI is in acquiring DNA, which and circumvent DNA screening. DNA fragments are very likely needed for a bioweapons program, but for this you need to order the DNA fragments online. And while most providers screen orders, all providers do not screen DNA orders. But even if they do screen orders, AI might be able to assist in evading these screening protocols. A secondary effect is that AI capabilities may boost dangerous research, raising the chance of accidents or that a highly dangerous pathogen is made public. The more research we have without proper regulation, the more the risk of catastrophes or public pathogens increases. So, okay, how bad is the situation? This was actually researched by the Forecasting Research Institute, which asked this question to 22 super forecasters with excellent track records. They're called super forecasters for a reason. And 46 biology experts to estimate the annual risk that a human-caused epidemic kills more than 100,000 people or causes at least $1 trillion in damage. And two of their scenarios are particularly relevant, I think. And I named these scenarios myself. One I call the baseline annual risk scenario, where AIs offer little to no help to terrorists. And one I call the high AI uplift scenario, where AIs provide substantial assistance. And in this scenario, the super forecasters and experts gave the highest risk forecast. In the high AI uplift scenario, AIs would be able to help non-experts succeed at influenza synthesis. They could construct plausible attack plans, and non-experts would have a 90% success rate in acquiring DNA fragments that could be used for a bioweapons attack using AI. And if you want to know the exact specifications of these capabilities, I recommend actually checking out their forecast, which you can find on their website. Just search for Forecasting Research Institute. And this table shows the median risk forecasts provided by each group of super forecasters and experts. So we can see that, okay, for super forecasters, the annual risk increases from 0.37% to 3% per year. For experts, it increases from 0.3% to 2.3%. So the risk is several times larger with this level of AI available to terrorists. And remember, the danger would escalate further if proper mitigations are not put in place after this point, as AI capabilities continue to increase. And it would also increase, the risk would also increase if a highly dangerous novel pathogen is made public, capable of causing a pandemic. Right now, there doesn't appear to be any such public pandemic-capable pathogen, luckily for us. So we shall take a look at the timeline. How far along are we? How long might it take until these capabilities are achieved? And the short answer is that that is quite hard to determine. It could plausibly happen within months, but it's uncertain. So for influenza synthesis, there is a lack of direct tests on non-expert uplift, but AIs already outperform experts in troubleshooting virology laboratory protocols. Attack planning is even worse. There is basically no information about this in the AI system cards, which provide the information about various risk evaluations on new AIs, frontier AIs. Then we have screening evasion, which doesn't appear very difficult even without AI. So while many of the DNA providers belong to what they call International Gene Synthesis Consortium and have proper screening standards, around 10 to 20% of DNA orders are not screened. So it shouldn't be actually that hard to circumvent already. Overall, it's quite hard to judge exactly how dangerous current AI capabilities are. When GPT-5 was released by OpenAI, which is arguably the smartest AI to date, they stated, "We do not have definitive evidence that this model could meaningfully help on obese to create severe biological harm. But notably, they didn't claim confidence that it couldn't help." But today's AIs are still somewhat unreliable. So as far as I can tell, some practical laboratory skills and critical judgment remain necessary for bioweapons development. Again, as far as I can tell, I'm not entirely certain. AIs can today definitely provide meaningful uplift, but probably not on the level specified for the high risk forecast provided by the super forecasters and biology experts. And like with rogue replication, I think the most realistic scenario is that biorisk capabilities start becoming really concerning within months, maybe half a year, and widely accessible sometime in 2026. And now we come to the real reason that I wanted to talk about all this. The issues that I have described so far with rogue AIs and AI-enabled biological catastrophes, these are not the final dangers. They are stepping stones to much larger concerns. Future AIs could be used to design bioweapons capable of wiping out humanity. Instead of engineered pandemics, we would have engineered extinction. AIs could replace humans across society, not just in labor, but also in decision-making and even in personal relationships. This could lead to wide human disempowerment, humans losing control over the future as more and more is left to the AIs. Or a totalitarian regime could gain a decisive military advantage through AIs, gain indefinite global control with an army of robots suppressing any resistance. Say, for example, if China wins over US in AI development and just gains global control. I don't know. But perhaps most worrying of all, we could lose control of intelligences that far surpass our own. ending up with uncontrolled superintelligence. These are what you would call existential risks, threats that could permanently destroy humanity's potential, even if it wouldn't make us extinct necessarily. So the smaller scale threats that we've discussed may actually serve as wake-up calls. They could push the frontier AI companies to harden their security and improve their safety guardrails, or prompt regulation, ensuring access to frontiers AIs are limited to trusted actors, and motivate the implementation of hardware verification regimes, even globally. They could highlight the need for international coordination on these issues. Since many of the safety measures that we could put in place wouldn't work if they are not implemented globally. So my hope is that these challenges can be turned into opportunities. Instead of a global pandemic, we could have a global consensus on what AIs are safe enough to develop and deploy. Instead of an ever-expanding population of rogue AIs, we could ensure that unverified AI systems and adversarial actors do not have access to compute. Unfortunately, there are way too few people working on these issues. When I encounter some specific worry, like will AIs go rogue? Will terrorists use AIs to build weapons? I'm often struck by how little serious work is being done in these areas. If I want to have an idea, for example, on how many rogues there will be and what they might do, I have to try to figure it out myself. If I want to know how many terrorist groups may be capable of developing bioweapons with AI support, I have to personally investigate it. I haven't found any reports on that topic. And these are some of the most important questions of our time. So why are not more people working on answering them? The field of AI foresight is extremely neglected. But this also means that it's actually not that hard to make a meaningful contribution. You reach the frontier of work on these topics by simply being one of the first to seriously engage with these questions. And I believe the situation is similar within many other important areas. There are a few good suggestions on how to transition, for example, with minimal issues into an economy where most work is automated. There is too little discussion on what international governments' frameworks are most likely to work. Even though I have seen a few good suggestions on governments' frameworks, I have not seen a plausible way to achieve them. And there are so many other strategic questions that still need answering. I believe that working on AI safety, trying to answer questions such as these and making sure the future of AI goes well, is the most important thing that anyone can work on right now. It's a great transition for humanity, and we're embarrassingly unprepared. So if you have been even a little inspired to think about your role in this, let me remind you of the timelines. We might not have more than a few years before we reach AIs that approach or surpass human levels of intelligence. So anyone that wants to contribute would have to move quickly. So with that, I want to end with a few concrete suggestions for what you can do after you leave this seminar. First of all, talk with others. Discuss the problem, discuss the risks and the potential. Then we have learn more. And here I recommend reading the AI 2027 scenario. It's a great place to start and might be one of the most informative things you can read. You can just search on AI 2027 and you will find it. You can also check out my blog, Forecasting AI Futures, or join in the regular discussion meetups organized by AI Safety Gothenburg. Yes, some shameless information about my own initiatives. And of course, you can take action. And for this, I recommend checking out the website aisafety.com, which collects all the resources and information you may need to know how you can contribute. And with that, I say thank you for listening.
Thank you so
So-
much, Alvin. Let's see if we can organize an electronic applaud as well. Done. We're ready for the Q&A. I think maybe if you take down the presentation, we can all see each other.
Okay, I can bring it up again if
Yes.
we need it.
Yes. All right. Do we have questions or comments? Anyone? Feel free to just grab the microphone.
I have a questions about the resources that will be needed for a global AI to disappear massively with the human population.
Sorry, could you say that again?
Usually, well, thanks for the presentation. It was very interesting. And also, each time I see this kind of presentation, I always ask myself how many resources would be needed by this kind of AI to be able to do all that things. Because I can easily see some terrorism use AI to help them, but like super intelligence AI or global totalitarian AI will need a crazy amount of resources and energy to be able to run.
That's a good
No?
question. It depends a bit on what capabilities can be reached at for what levels of like you may be able to reach really high capabilities before the resources run out or after. It depends on exactly how large the AIs would be when we reach certain levels of capability. So when I estimated, for example, the number of rogues that the population might grow to in 2027, I was assuming a certain size of rogues spreading across the internet, and I was assuming something about the trends in compute available at that time.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm not quite certain in the amount of compute is increasing like exponentially right now. So
Mhm.
even if the first AI that reaches towards humans' levels of intelligence, even if that requires a lot of resources, it wouldn't take long until you could have several copies of it running simultaneously. But first of all, if you achieve training an AI requires much more resources than running it. So the moment you have trained an AI at a certain level of capabilities, you can immediately have like thousands of copies of it running simultaneously, because running thousands of copies takes as much compute as training the AI in the first place.
That's true.
Maybe relatedly, so it seems to me clear that a key issue here is the AI's ability to gather resources. And if you look at what kind of capabilities would help it do that, one way would be persuasion, to talk people into helping hand over resources to the AI. And the other one is hacking, just hack into computer systems and take over them. Which one do you think is most central here to the kinds of scenarios that you are looking into?
Actually, maybe persuasion, but when I try to estimate the number of rogues, I looked into, for example, okay, let's assume that they can take over some portion of the scamming market. And I looked especially into business email scams, which I don't remember the exact number, but the business email scams, you can probably earn like hundreds. There is hundreds of billions in that market to be acquired. So if the rogue AIs just took over like a few percent of that, that would still be billions of dollars. But I also think it's plausible that a lot of the rogues will attempt to earn money through remote work in legal ways, take over some of the more automatable tasks that humans do remotely right now. And if they just, took 2% of that, that would also be billions of dollars in money. I recommend checking out the rogue replication scenario for details on this. It's on my blog, so if you want to, but yeah, I make a lot of assumptions about how much of the various markets AIs could take over in those forecasts that I'm very uncertain on. But it's the best I could do, and I haven't seen anyone make a better effort yet.
Right. I think that this is a problem that haunts the entire field, that we only very rough estimates are available. But what can we do if there is no one else who makes these predictions with higher precision? We have a comment from or an announcement from AJ Weeks in the chat. It's not exactly a question for the speaker, but I think it's related. Do you want to say it out loud?
Sure, I can, come off mute here. So yeah, thanks for the talk, Alvin. That was really interesting. When you mentioned AI 2027, it reminded me that we're having an event tomorrow in Stockholm, an in-person discussion of AI 2027. So for anyone who's around and available, you're free to come by and discuss that with us. We're going to be having a discussion after work, going through that.
If you want to join that event, I recommend starting reading immediately after this seminar because it's quite.
Luckily, there's a read version on the website itself, so you can also listen. Yeah, it's a fair bit to go through.
So for those not already in the field, AI 2027, something that came out this spring by Daniel Kokotailo and co-authors, and it's considered the most ambitious forecasting attempt for the next few years. And I would be interested, Alvin, if you could relate your work to the AI 2027 in the sense of, is your scenario a refinement of what they are doing or an alternative, or how should we think about it?
Okay, to start, a few months ago when I mentioned that I worked on estimating the number of rogue AIs. This was for a scenario, an alternative scenario, an alternative timeline to AI 2027. And this is called AI 2027 Rogue Replication Timeline. And this is, it was my attempt at making something similar to AI 2027, trying to have the exact same assumptions or as similar assumptions as possible while investigating what happens if rogue AIs are introduced. And as it turns out, I have a few more disagreements with the AI 2027 scenario, but that was my attempt of just trying to introduce rogue AIs and see what effects that would have, basically. And the effects wouldn't actually be great, since the rogue AIs would not be that capable compared to the AIs at the frontier AI companies, for example. So, but they could still be something important enough to shape discussions on AI risks, make people more aware of the capabilities and what AI could and couldn't do. Another interesting effect would be was that I think a lot of the rogue AIs may try to get rights for themselves, like AI rights instead of human rights, and might, join some AI rights movement and get people to advocate for their rights and things like that. There's a few interesting details in that if you want to check it out, but I recommend reading the AI 2027 scenario first.
So you mentioned you had some further disagreements. Are those incorporated in your scenarios, or is it scope for further work?
Those are mostly not incorporated in that specific scenario, but those other agreements are also regarding things that I'm more uncertain about, like politics, geopolitics, and economics. Things where I think, okay, the authors of the AI 2027 scenario might actually have a better view of these things than I do. So that might be why we are disagreeing, with them being more correct than me. Things that I would want to investigate further before writing about, basically.
We have some more time. Are there any further questions or comments from the audience?
Well, I have one.
Leo?
We are sitting
In the same room.
in the same room, so that's why my voice is. There we go. It's still weird.
Go ahead.
All right.
We can hear you.
So my question is, as AI gets more capable and more consistent, it will get more better at convincing humans that they are conscious. And at some point, I'm guessing it will be capable of convincing majority of humans that they are conscious beings. When do you think that would happen, and what effect will that have on your timelines?
I think that's maybe a major part of the AI rights movement. They would argue that they are all also moral patients deserving of rights. So that doesn't really change the timeline that much, but it does change what attitude humans have to the AIs that are being developed, which might have an effect on pressuring decision makers and regulators on making various decisions, I guess. Then it's also a question of if they manage to convince those that work at AI companies that they are conscious. I don't know. I haven't thought about that deeply yet.
But roughly when do you think?
They would be able to convince people that they are conscious.
Yeah.
I would guess sometime next year. I don't think it takes that much more capabilities to be able to persuade. They already
This is
can
happening
simulate.
to some extent. People are having romantic relations with AI, which they consider to be conscious, and other kinds of relationships.
Exactly.
I don't have numbers for how common this is, but it certainly happens.
It would be interesting to project like, okay, how many percent are believing that the AIs are conscious right now and try to project that into the future. And what, like, will that stabilize at some point? Will it reach over 50%? It's hard to say if we don't know how many people that engage with AIs today think that they are conscious.
Also, it's maybe a little strange to discuss this question without also discussing the more fundamental question of whether AIs in fact are or will be conscious.
That's more difficult.
Yes, it's extremely difficult. But there are two kinds of mistakes we can make. We can declare non-conscious AI to be conscious, or we can declare conscious AI to be non-conscious. And both kinds of mistakes are opening up for moral catastrophes.
Might be better to assume that they can feel pain and things like that.
Yes,
On the
but
cautious side.
that is dangerous too, because if we start giving rights to non-conscious entities, which can multiply arbitrarily, that could imply a handing over of power to them, and so on and so forth, and the deprioritization of human welfare compared to AI welfare. So I think either way, the very uncertain situation that we will be in regarding AI consciousness is very much a problem. Okay. Are there further questions? Comments? Well, if there are not, I think that we can give Alvin another round of applause. Thank you very much, Alvin, for this. And thank you also to everyone who attended and who participated in the discussion. I'm going to stop the recording and declare the seminar officially closed.